Warning! This video contains a lot of flashing lights. This could cause some, epilepsy issues and seizures and whatnot, so warning! Wow, this is a weird one, guys. Like, there are a ton of people who have never played FNAF World in their life. I did, but back in my, original review, I was kind of forced to because I was stuck in the game over.
Oh, we could take you back there for old time's sake.
I'm already reviewing the game.
There, all nice and warm.
Damn. Luckily, I've already beaten this game.
Yeah, this was my first time in the game over. Not the most pleasant time, but it happens. Regardless, I never really did have the time to talk about this game's history, did I? This is one of the more obscure FNAF games, and that's because it came out rushed. Scott himself showed off the game looking pretty good, all things considered. The gameplay that you're seeing now. When the game actually came out, there was a massive graphical downgrade for what was shown. Eventually it was recalled, and Scott ended up refunding people. A few weeks later, the finished game showed up on Game Jolt, and is the only place you can legitimately get the game. It's free, too. Now, I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but perhaps it being free is the punishment? I don't know. Oddly enough, this game got some free DLC as well, and then the game was never discussed again. Outside of me, of course. I'll play the game so you guys don't have to! Haha! This isn't FNAF game anyway, rather it's a spin-off, a fan service type game. The concept isn't bad, but there are reasons none of the other games are played on my little YouTuber hellscape here. Also, there's a reason this video has a warning. Oddly enough, Scott's YouTube thumbnail is the final boss here, so let's do this. Let's take on Scott Cawthon himself. Time for a rematch. So let's talk about the plot, and there isn't one. I mean, roll credits, right? Seriously, the plot is a basic things are happening, so go stop the bad guy, and it doesn't get any deeper than that. In fact, me saying that kind of makes it sound deeper than it actually is. You start out and Fredbear tells you that something is happening on the flip side, which is never brought up again. That's really about it, unless you want to go through some of the secret endings. There are little writings about the animatronics during loading screens, but that doesn't really get deep either. Some of which are just there because it feels like they need to be there. Ugh. So writing is a mega bust, but the game, at least the newer release, looks pretty nice. The graphics and the animation are constantly in motion, which is also nice. The music is pretty good too, and the environments look amazing. The characters are mostly cuter versions of themselves, and there's a lot of fan service here. Yeah, almost every animatronic from FNAF 1 all the way up to FNAF 4 are here, not counting the Halloween update. Yeah, the Halloween update isn't canon, newbies! Anyway, I think the cute, chibi versions of the animatronics look really good. The enemies often alter or recolored versions of those particular animatronics are also charming. Some of the enemies are just random blobs or animals, or in one instance, a giant, tasty-looking cake. Hell, there's even a machine gun snowman boss fight. Not that you can really tell while playing the game with how bright things are flashing around the screen, but he does indeed have machine guns. Oh yeah, that warning is definitely real. When you get into tougher fights, the screen will flash constantly with attacks and effects all over the screen, making it hard to really watch. Even if you can stomach the flashing of the screen, there's so much visual noise during combat that it is hard to sometimes tell what is happening. This is especially difficult since the options for combat show up directly next to the character whose turn it is to move. When the screen is flashing, shaking, moves left or right, it's hard to actually see the buttons you need to see or read to move properly without memorization. Outside of that issue though, the gameplay is fine. It may be hard to see what moves you actually have to do with all the visual noise, sure, but there's only like 3 moves per character. Once you get a move you like to use, it doesn't take much to just spam that one move for each character. The more characters you get, the better options you have. Late game characters simply have better moves, so gaining later characters is important. Though you can beat the game with early game characters, apparently. You have several types of moves. You can attack one character maybe damage a few nearby with Bites or Spring Lock move, which is potent in late game. You can heal with certain songs, cupcakes, and gift boxes, which are basically extra lives for each character. They die and a gift box will revive them. It is a bit OP if I'm honest, since not only does it revive a character, it fills up all of their HP as well, which is just awesome. There are also attacks that can attack everyone. You can summon storm clouds, which can lower stats and actually damage, pizzas, fretlings, and shooting stars to attack pretty much everybody. Then there's the utility moves like summoning an army of laser endos to add more gradual damage, or the Mimic Ball to let you copy moves. The Mimic Ball is super useful. What's better than one strong attack? Two, of course. Doubles healing moves too. You can also raise or lower stats as well. Speaking of the Mimic Ball, you can actually find computer chips and companions to equip as well. I found that just one actually adds the Mimic Ball constantly, as well as adding the shield, which is really nice. The chips add some type of effect, helping find playable characters, stopping certain moves, buffing out stats, or lowering enemy stats. It's great. Unlike the chips, which you find kind of strewn all over the place, the companion characters you buy from Lolbit, a Funtime Foxy variant. The companions range from helping you attack to assisting you. I normally have ones that deal damage or heal over time. You also have the UFOs to attack or use eyes to drain boss health gradually, making the boss fights easier to deal with. It's simple, but everything checks out here. Now, if there was a reason to utilize all of these crazy cool gadgets outside of boss encounters. Similar to your characters, enemies just get stronger moves over time. Some will have instant kill moves like Unscrew, but for the most part, these are somewhat rare until later in the game. Outside of that, all the enemies can be destroyed using the exact same strategies over and over again. You may face ones who are annoying with Jump Scare though. Yeah, Jump Scare is a move which basically stuns your target. Oh yeah, you can use it too, but it lasts longer on you than it does on your opponents, naturally. The only real thing that changes up the gameplay level by level is the layout of the overworld. Yep, that's it. You have a little Freddy avatar as you walk around the overworld. There are mazes, fake objects, and glitch objects to deal with. Most of the mazes are fine, but underground your lighting sucks. Luckily there's a map function that you can use to help you find your way, but the map kind of sucks too. The last dungeon is a funhouse-like maze though, and this is both visually and physically disorienting. Sometimes tents send you to weird places. The place is beaten when you recognize objects can be fake here too. This wall leads to a tombstone, which leads to a fake trees and a boss fight. A few fake walls later and you're out. Finding a key and a tougher version of all the boss fights, then you basically get to the final boss, which is slightly different depending on your mode. Normal mode stops with this giant mechanical owl thing, while hard mode has you fight the owl and Scott himself, the creator of FNAF. Interesting. You also have glitched objects. You can find them to progress, and touching one brings you to some weird landscape. It's a maze, but there's no enemies, just a maze. The deeper you go, the less pixels you deal with. Just don't go too many levels down, as the game warns you, or else. Or else what, you may wonder? Why, it's one of the many secret endings of the game, of course. Yep, just fighting Scott isn't the only ending. This is the lake, and Old Man Consequences. You can only get here via the last glitched object, and this place is actually very hidden. You can talk to the old man, or you can glitch into the lake for another seizure warning. Or you can get this ending via Ultimate Custom Night, I guess. Huh, weird. Another ending is making Fredbear talk to himself. Huh. You also have the clocks ending. You have to wait several seconds after Fredbear is done talking on the very first screen to even have a chance at this, though. I cheated a bit to get to this ending. I was exhausted when I remembered it was a thing. It does directly reference FNAF 3, though, which is really cool. The last ending is fighting the secret boss fight, Chipper's Revenge. This is harder than Scott, but can be taken down with basically the same strats. This is also the most interesting ending via gameplay-wise. Doing all this does very little, by the way. It just adds trophies to the title screen. Is it worth the pain of possibly replaying the game if you don't do things specifically to get one ending? Hell no. Now, there are some secrets worth finding. Remember when I mentioned the Mimic Ball computer chip? Oh yeah, this is great. So to get some hidden chips, you'll need to go into harder mazes, but the best stuff is in the glitched-like level. If you find the right object, grinding up against it will push you past the physics and send you in an area that lacks collision outside of an invisible wall. This is where you can find some of the best gear in the game, but the enemies here are insanely tough too. They share some of the moves with late game boss fights. I'm talking about the owl statue and Scott himself. They aren't as tough as these bosses, but for regular enemies, they are the toughest in the game. Lastly, let's talk about the grind for all the characters in the game. What a load of bullshit. Even with the Find Characters computer chip, this took hours. Days even. The last character may show up early, or if you have shit luck like I do, he may not show up for even days depending on how much time you have to play video games. If Fredbear is the last character to unlock, just cheat. If you really need to get that ending in which he paradoxes himself. Super easy to hack the game and cheat, by the way. Alright, let's shift gears and talk about the DLC for a second. It's free with the game and came out sometime after the fact, which is probably more interesting than the main game, sadly. You have to beat the game first to access it, but the DLC is just better than the main game in general, just because most of the DLC ditches the RPG mechanics. See, the game goes straight meta, talking about how FNAF World is a flop, that Scott is creating something truly awful. You need to figure out what. Hacking into the Halloween update from FNAF 4, yes, that update, you find several minigame-like spin-offs that Scott created using coding from the other characters. These other characters include Chipper, Coffee from Desolate Hope, the Halloween update animatronics, and the avatar Scott used as the final boss of FNAF World. That does actually come from one of Scott's games, just to be clear. To free their coding, you have to play these minigames that are spin-offs of the FNAF series. There's Foxy.EXE, a flash horror game built like a shit creepypasta. You play as Bonnie and just pass by wonky-looking cats while an annoying voice coaches you. Interesting. There's Foxy Flyers, a 2D bullet hell game in which Foxy and some female animatronics fight Killdozer. Killdozer is a boss fight / antagonist from A Desolate Hope. This one is simple but really fun, all things considered. Then there's Freddy in Space, a small Metroid-like game in which you play as Freddy. His gun starts out small but can be upgraded, and you eventually fight Scott acting like a spider version of Mother Brain. You unlock a lot of characters here depending on how many upgrades you get or don't get. Foxy Flyers is a similar situation, whereas Foxy.EXE thankfully only has one character. Then there's Chica's Rainbow, a tough-as-hell platformer that are like those Kaizo-like Flash games from Newgrounds. Blech. The Rainbow, voiced by Jimmy Neutron, makes fun of you more and more as you die, and eventually gets tired of you and kills you herself. If this happens, you restart the game's checkpoints be damned. Whole game, just gone. Which is hard enough to do as is, mind you. Also, turning your voice off pisses her off regardless. Oops. Once you unlock a large batch of characters with frankly OP powers and abilities compared to the previous animatronics, you start out to look for the final boss fight. Yeah, I cheated here again. I'm tired of the RPG side of the game. Regardless, after a huge and very annoying maze, because you can't even use the map feature here, you end up fighting Chica's Rainbow, which is kind of cool. Afterwards, you get a little teaser of Scott's actual next game, Five Nights at Freddy's Sister Location, which is kind of an awesome reward, all things considered, at least back in those days. Overall, the DLC is actually pretty fun. It isn't so fun that I recommend the entire game for that, but since the game is also free, it wouldn't be harmless to give it a try either. The issue is you have to get through the main game to get to that point. Kind of. There is actually a cheat to get into the Halloween update first. Just saying. But, yeah, this can really test your patience if you decide to actually do this legitimately. Although the cheat to get into the DLC part first is also somewhat legit, because you don't have to hack the game for it, just saying. The level progression is boring, as fights don't get any more interesting outside of slightly tougher moves the opponents have. The story doesn't really exist. The visual noise of fights gets to be too much, and replaying the game to get all the endings just isn't worth it in the end, nor is the grind for all the characters. Some of the endings and secrets are worth a look. The visuals and music are great, not counting the noisy battles, and the mazes can be kind of fun most of the time. The gameplay is also pretty solid. They say a game that is bad is at least somewhat entertaining, just in the wrong ways. A game that is mediocre is just dull, which some people claim is almost worse. Every positive this game has a point in which the game lets you down as well. As far as I'm concerned, the game is just a load of meh. It isn't super bad, but it isn't really good either, making it kind of a dull experience. It exists, it's playable, there is some good here, but there's a lot of bad here as well. This game scores a middle of the road 5 out of 10 from me. The game is meh, and I would never recommend it normally, unless you really want to experience the game. However, with the game being free, there isn't really anything wrong with checking it out if you're a FNAF fan or you like dull, simplistic animatronics that are designed to be easier than Pokemon. Or maybe Freddy in Space looks amazing and you really want to play that and are willing to play through the dull RPG side of things for it. Either way, that's all the time I have for talking about this one. If you like the video, like, subscribe, comment, hit the bell for live notifications, and take care, my minions.
Hey, Demon Dog, I'm free to go, right?
No, you cheated on your game. You can't just cheat and get out of here.
Oh, hey, I found this paper with a level skip on it. This just lets me go. I guess I'm leaving. Bye.
Hey, wait a minute. That's not...